because of the COVID, but hopefully going down later on this year. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is what we call the EVO2 protocol. And basically this involves medical ozone intravenously, dialysis filtration, photomodulation, and a number of supplements. And we're doing this to basically help win the battle of oxidative stress and promote longevity and a healthy lifespan. So basically, we're talking about extracorporeal blood oxygenation and ozone therapy. We're doing photomodulation, and we're doing photomodulation, and I'll get into that later, with two separate color lights. We're doing a UVA light for about 360 nanometers and a red light of 660 nanometers. We're using a number of supplements. We just have one supplement that's actually going to be released, I think, next week sometime. And then we're also talking about some other cellular therapies that we get involved with. All right, so basically the goal of ozone therapy, at least medical wise, is to reduce inflammation, basically inflammaging, as there was a great article a couple of years ago in, I believe, Time magazine. And one of the things we're really trying to stress is we can reduce inflammation. And if we reduce inflammation, we slow down aging, we increase our health span. And ozone is one very good way of achieving this goal. So basically the balance board that we walk on is, you can see here, we have oxidative stress and we have antioxidants. And as long as they're sort of in balance, we're okay. But if one kind of gets out of kilter, then we start having problems. I should say if oxidative stress gets out of kilter, because that's usually the one that's giving us the problem. Age-related diseases, inflammation, et cetera, and it goes on and on. So basically, as we age, our antioxidant defenses diminish, and it leads to many bad consequences. You can see cancer, osteoporosis, dementia. Osteoporosis, by the way, is an autoimmune disease. I gave a great lecture a couple of weeks ago on that to a number of physicians in Asia. And it really is an autoimmune disease, among other things. So anyway, when we get ozone, sometimes you've smelled ozone when you go out after a thunderstorm, because electricity can basically bond that oxygen molecule. It splits it up and then it forms triple oxygen, so to speak. It's an O3. It's a very fleeting molecule, so to speak. It doesn't last that long. And we can see here, step one, we get an oxygen molecule, then we split it, then lo and behold, it bonds to another one and we get the triple oxygen again. And this is the guy that does a lot of the work right here. It's like a free radical. But what we need to realize when we're dealing with ozone, ozone is a pro-drug. Interesting, I didn't kind of know that concept. I had an idea, but as I got into ozone, I learned more about it. So a pro-drug is basically a drug that is inactive before metabolism. Your body has to basically activate this. And that's exactly what happens with ozone. Ozone is essentially inactive until it gets into our body and starts reacting with some of the cells and other aspects of the body. Whereas an active drug, you take it right away and it's already activated and it just goes from there. So remember, it's a pro-drug. It has to be activated by the body. So, you have to know some of the peculiarities of ozone. And basically, it's much more hydrosoluble than oxygen. It's 10 times more, I believe, available in a hydro solution than it is, let's say, like plasma, than oxygen would be. Also, what is the therapeutic window, at least for medical purposes, of ozone? Well, it's between 10 and 80 micrograms per milliliter. And, when you have an ozone machine, you can sort of regulate it. And interestingly enough, for those of you who aren't familiar with using ozone machines, you basically get oxygen, you have an electrical converter in there and it makes ozone. But interestingly enough, the lower the amount of oxygen, the higher the concentration of ozone. So it's kind of a paradoxical thing. And basically, there's two things that we have to remember. Ozone works by something called ozone messengers. One messenger, and I'm going to talk more about these things, is hydrogen peroxide, and the other one is what we call lipid oxidation products. It's what happens when we start oxidating polyunsaturated fatty acids and things like that. So ozone, like any other drug, it depends on its dosage. A drug can be something that's God-saving and it can really help you and it can save your life, or it can actually kill you. And, you think about some of the things here. For instance, let's think about glucose. If glucose is in a very special range, it's normal and we live fine, have no problems. If it goes to a very low level, well, we can get a hypoglycemic coma and we can die. And by the same token, if it's very high, it can cause a metabolic syndrome. Same thing with oxygen. If we breathe oxygen at 21% concentration, we can live for 80 or more years without a problem. But if we breathe pure oxygen, it's going to give us some significant medical problems after a few days. Ozone's the same way. In a special concentration, it can really do the good. If it's too high or too low, it's not going to do much. Too high, well, it's going to be very dangerous. Now, ozone can stimulate cells to take action against both viruses and bacteria. Now, I'm very careful not to go online and start saying, look, ozone can basically kill a virus such as COVID. But in Italy, they've had very good results doing that, because what happened is the ozone can basically dissolve the lipid